Hey guys, this is Samuel Geek, and I just switched back to Android. Those of you that have followed my channel for a long time know that I originally entered the the Android iOS smartphone era with a Droid 2. The reason for this is because I lived in New Mexico, which was a very rural state, and Verizon is the only carrier at the time. And at the time, the iPhone was exclusive to AT&T. I probably would have gotten the iPhone 3G or 3GS. I can't remember which it was at the time. If it was available on Verizon network, but because I lived in a rural area and AT&T was basically non-usable out there, I had to go with Verizon. And the closest thing to an Android phone, at least to my knowledge at that time, was the Droid 2. So I used the Droid 2 for 2 years, and then I picked up the iPhone 4S, which was the first iPhone available on Android. Actually, I think it was the iPhone 4, because I think my brother had an iPhone 4, and I had the iPhone 4S. So I decided to switch. And I got another Motorola phone. Ironically, this is the Motorola E4. I didn't switch because I wanted to. I switched because I dropped my iPhone 7, and at the time, basically what was happening is I dropped my iPhone 7. It completely shattered, and it was going to cost, it cost like $100 and something to replace it. I've been wanting to get off my parents' plan for a while. I was on it to save money, but because of some weird arrangements that were made at my previous living situation in order to avoid paying for internet access, I decided to enable unlimited data on my iPhone, and I used that as my phone connectivity. So I decided that if I'm going to use unlimited, I don't want my parents to foot bill for unlimited to everybody, my brother and my mother and my father all together. And I kind of need unlimited data just for my jobs that I do. And I decided I would just buy a cheap phone that would get the job done, and I would have unlimited data for pretty cheap. And now that I'm not, basically forced to use Verizon, I could go with the cheaper plan. So that's what I decided to do. And I'm going to ship the iPhone 7 back to my father so he can get the screen replaced and finally upgrade from his iPhone 5S. My iPhone 7 was basically the last phone on the planet to be tied to a contract, so it's not paid off, which is another reason why I couldn't just, get a new phone. There was all these suggestions when I told people that I broke my phone and I needed a new one, but I decided to get the Motorola E because I heard it was the best budget Android phone. And I went to T-Mobile and I got it there. And using it, I thought, oh, this is going to be kind of a pain in the butt because it's just, last time I used Android was just terrible. And even on the Fire tablet that my mother won at the casino and gave to me, that was pretty terrible too. In my experience, Android has always been kind of bad, but stock Android on the Moto E line, well, near stock, it's not completely stock, it has some Moto stuff on top of it. It's actually really, really good, and it runs really, really well. It's well optimized. And Android has come a long way. It also made me rethink the budget smartphone. I mean, I could do almost everything on this phone that I could do on my iPhone 7. The main differences being the camera on this is crap and it's made out of plastic. Those are the only two differences really from performance speed. Maybe a little bit better on the iPhone 7. I don't play too many games on my phone. I imagine that's a huge difference too, but the basic stuff, editing documents, going on Facebook, email management, it's pretty much all the same speed. It pretty much works just as good. I have some complaints with the default phone calling app and how that works. But other than that, it's pretty similar. And it makes me wonder, are flagship smartphones really necessary for the average consumer? And is this the reason why iPhone X is really hurting? As you know, the iPhone X was the very first, mainline premium smartphone, beyond flagship, $1,000 phone. And I think it is. I mean, really, this $100 phone can pretty much satisfy someone like me who is a very heavy user. Why would you spend 10 times as much on a smartphone unless you really need a good camera? I think that as these trends continue, more consumers are going to realize that they don't need to drop $600, $700, $800 on a phone. And they're going to rethink their buying decisions. This makes me wonder, will contracts return? Probably not, because a lot of these smaller companies circumvented it by offering to buy out some of the people's contracts. But they're going to need to lower the cost of these phones. $1,000 for a phone. When this happened, I was unemployed. And I just could not justify dropping $600 on an on an iPhone 8. Or I definitely couldn't justify dropping $1,000 on an iPhone 10. I thought about buying an iPhone SE, but it just wasn't disposable enough in case I decided to switch carriers or decide that this was a temporary arrangement, which I don't think it's going to be. But just in case it was, I wanted to buy something cheap. And this works. It gets everything I want done. I can do text messages. I can do everything works just almost as efficiently as it did on the iPhone 7. And, the specs on this aren't bad at all. And it's a $100 phone. I mean, I hate a lot of these YouTubers you see on here who discount budget products or only use them a little bit and don't really understand them. There's no really good budget phone YouTube channel, because I was looking it up because I was trying to decide which budget phone I was going to get. Personally, I just asked around, and some of the other folks in the industry I had connections to, and the Moto E always came up as the best budget phone. But yeah, I mean, if this is the future of budget phones, I do think that premium smartphones are at threat. I just don't see people using telephones as serious computing devices. I don't see people using Photoshop on them. I don't see people, doing the serious work that would require all the processing that they desire on it. And I don't think camera and animojis are really big selling points. I mean, they just haven't been. Hasn't been a convincing enough argument for people to switch from the 7 and the 6. And as time goes on, I just don't see a compelling argument for dropping $1,000 on a phone. I mean, I get the argument that you use it every day, you want something premium that works well, but it's not that much better. I've used an iPhone 10. And yes, in some ways it blows my little $100 Moto E out of the water. But in many ways it doesn't. There's no practical functionality right out of the gate that's a huge selling point, that's a huge difference. There's no real difference in what the phones can really do that's different. I mean, some of the other premium smartphones that were innovative at the time just had bad software that nobody used. I still think that Microsoft's Continuum was a really good idea, and that if Google and Apple were smart, they would try to seize upon that and bring something that if you're going to be dropping $1,000 on a phone, why can't I plug my phone into something and make it into a laptop? Why can't I easily do that and it works flawlessly and it feels like a real premium product? I think it's this good idea. I think Microsoft was just a terrible a terrible company to try to execute it. But I think they're going to need to start thinking outside of the box if they're going to want to sell a phone for $1,000. As a tech guy, as a guy that's been, following the industry for years, using this budget phone, it really makes me seriously question why anyone would drop that kind of money on a phone. I mean, if they just improved the cameras out of this, made it a bit better quality build and upgrade the specs a little bit, I mean, this could be easily like a $200-300 phone and still be pretty damn good. So, what do you guys think? Do you think that the era of flagship phones is coming to an end? Like, do you guys think that, well, not coming to an end, but do you think it's going to start being like desktop computers or other premium computer products? I kind of think that we're going to enter an era where the Moto E's of the world may be like the gateway PCs of yesteryear, where they're just serviceable enough to satisfy most people, and most people aren't going to drop thousands of dollars on a computer. I mean, we saw it last time. The Macs used to be incredibly expensive, but they were like the mainstream computer. And then when Gateway and Dell and all these cheap companies came around and offered serviceable stuff that could do pretty much everything that the average person wanted, those very expensive Macs just fell out of the mainstream marketplace. And I do think that iPhones and stuff like the Pixel and the Samsung Galaxies of the world are at threat from these budget offerings. I do think that Samsung does understand this a little bit, which is why they have their J Prime series. But I think that this is something we should seriously consider. Anyway, talk to you guys later. Samuel out.